Are your grain bins ready for harvest? That's the question you should ask yourself every summer going into every fall. We're asking it this summer going into this fall. Are your grain bins ready for harvest? That's what we're going to cover in this edition of XtremeAg's Cutting the Curve.
Welcome to XtremeAg's Cutting the Curve podcast, where real farmers share real insights and real results to help you improve your farming operation. This episode of Cutting the Curve is brought to you by CLAAS, where machines aren't just made, they're made for more. With a wide range of tractors, combines, foragers, and hay tools, CLAAS is a family business just as driven, demanding, and dedicated as yours. Go to claas.com and start cutting your curve with their cutting-edge equipment. And now, here's your host, Damian Mason.
Hey, welcome to another fantastic episode of XtremeAg's Cutting the Curve. I've got the guy from Superior Grain here. That's Dave Waylander and Rody Gelberg. Rody's been on before. He and I bumped into each other at the Commodity Classic, at Farm Progress Show. They're grain guys. They're grain facilities guys, grain bin guys. They're a business partner here of us at XtremeAg, and also they're a business partner with Johnny Varell. Johnny is one of the XtremeAg fellas, and also you've seen me, if you've looked at our videos, up on his grain drying facility. He's got superior equipment down in Jackson, Tennessee on his large-scale farming operation. In fact, he just put in a bunch of brand new upgrades to his grain facility, and we covered that in a couple of different episodes, me with Johnny and also me with Brian Adams. Johnny does a lot of interesting stuff. In fact, he grabs corn. It's a little bit green because of where he is. He can capture a bit of a positive basis and put that corn out there early. Well, turns out things dried down fast, so it changed his plan this year. He went from 27%, 25% corn to 17% in a matter of a couple of days. He's going to talk about that, but that's not the main story. The main story here is how he uses his facility and how he makes sure he's ready to capitalize on his capital investment, that is his grain facility, and how you can do the same, whether it's old, whether it's brand new. Are you ready for harvest? What do you think people get wrong, Johnny Varell, when it comes? I've seen your facility. It's impressive. I also saw what you started with, where it was like a 500 bushel wet grain dryer going into a 2,500 bushel bin. Maybe I'm off, but it wasn't by far. You started off very modestly, and you've continued to expand your grain facility. You've used the old stuff, you've patched it along. Now you've got the new stuff. What do you think people get wrong when it comes to their grain facility heading into harvest?
Now, I would think they don't look at it as a piece of equipment. So a lot of people do all the preventive maintenance on the combines and grain carts and all the trucks, getting all those ready to go. And a lot of times grain bins just kind of get skipped over until there's an issue. And usually when there's an issue, it's a bad issue. And so I would think a lot of times as farmers, we would just take the same amount of time, check everything over, make sure everything's ready to go for the year. It could really head off some major issues that you could run into, because when you start messing with high moisture corn and fans don't come in or come on, or unloading systems won't come on, and that corn's just sitting in there sweating, it's never a good thing. And you kind of have to go in panic mode and call people like Rody at midnight, hoping they'll answer the phone and help you walk through some situations. But I would think that's the biggest thing that a lot of times, people kind of overlook, getting those grain bins ready to go and having the whole grain system ready.
Both of the Superior guys were nodding their head when you said that. And I find it interesting. I've been around farmers my whole life, and when it gets to be harvest time, they get nuts. They get crazy. Planting time and harvest time, they get nuts. If that planter doesn't work, I could be losing $500 an hour, whatever the thing is. If my combine's broken down for a day and I can't get a part, that's costing me $1 million. I mean, they get a little overdone sometimes. They get excited. But you know what? They're worried about a $500,000 piece of equipment that might be broken down for a day and how much it's going to cost them. Yet, if you take a picture of like what Dave has behind him, that's modestly $3-4 million worth of grain facility set up.
Yeah.
It's down for a day at minimum, right? If it's down for a day, a $4 million grain facility down for a day is a hell of a lot more costly than a $400,000 piece of equipment down for a day. And I think Johnny's right. It's not because you don't know that the expense is there. It's easy to just say, oh, it's all fine. I mean, it's like, I don't know, just like my furnace. My furnace is fine. Isn't that what we're talking about? Dave?
Yeah, absolutely. And Johnny hit the nail on the head with that. I mean, guys just kind of take it for granted. Well, everything worked fine the last time I used it. It should just be fine, now coming into the fall. But yeah, any preventative type of maintenance that you can do, as far as just checking your fans, you don't want to turn your fans on completely when the bin is empty, because you could potentially knock floor supports, down that are holding up that floor. That's happens more than you would think, where you guys will turn the fans on when there's no grain on the floor, and that's just a huge no-no. You don't want to do that.
So
But you can bump them.
it creates such a vacuum that it actually degrades the infrastructure in the bottom of an empty bin.
Well, it's just when there's no weight on that floor, the supports that are holding it up, the steel supports are, very vulnerable. And these fans can put out, if you have a 20 horse or a 30 horse fan, you're moving a lot of air, and it can tip those supports over, and then you have a real big problem.
Yeah.
So I always encourage guys, just bump your fans, make sure that they at least turn on, you can run your unload, your power sweep. That's underneath the floor that takes the grain out. Because, here's the thing, electricians also get very busy in the fall, because they're currently wiring up projects that were sold. Plus they're getting phone calls from the guys that already have sites saying, hey, this doesn't work. This fan motor's down. Or can you come and check it? Or the motor on my unload doesn't work, and so forth. So the sooner the better. It's in the summertime, I think is a really good time to take care of some of those things when guys aren't quite as busy with everything else that they have going on.
Brody, you just talked about fans and you talked about sweeps. That can't be everything. That'd be an easy maintenance thing. What else should I be doing to make sure that my grain bins are ready for harvest?
Well, not necessarily just your grain bins, but your grain system. So if you've got legs and conveyors, augers, check your tracking on your conveyors, check your tracking on your legs.
I don't own grain bins. What's the tracking mean? Is that something everybody knows?
On a conveyor, when you've got your paddles or inside of a trunk or a case, if you will,
Yep.
There's an even gap on both sides. If you're pulling one direction harder than the other, you're going to end up wearing out a paddle. It's going to be riding on one side versus the other. So you want to make sure that that's completely centered. You want to make sure you got the proper tension on your chains, so you're not causing excess wear in that equipment. The dryers too. I mean, your dryer is part of your system. You don't have to necessarily run product through it, but you can fire your burner. You can check your fans, check your belts, make sure your belts are good, make sure they're not cracked, make sure you have all your belts. I've been to a few sites where like the fans have 4 belts per fan setup, and they'll be running with 1 belt. And it's like, how long you been doing that? Well, it's been like that for the last couple of years. It's fine. Well, it's fine until it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to add a little bit to that. Dryers are even, out of anything on your bin site, with the bins, any legs or conveyors, dryers seem to, be, prone to, time is not on their side as far as when they just sit. There's so many moving parts. There's so many things that need to be checked over and made sure that's going to operate the way that you want it to and correctly when the fall rolls around. That's definitely one piece of equipment that it's almost a must to go through, because the odds of anything just firing up is pretty rare. And it's a very important piece of equipment, that you need for your operation. And like you'd mentioned earlier, Damian, you're losing time, you're losing money.
Yeah.
And
So I want to throw this at you. All right, let's face it. You got 4 combines running. You got a bunch of employees. You've got an ag retail business. You got all those tractors. You got to monitor the marketing part of your stuff. It's easy to just let this go, and your facility's new. So admit it. This harvest, you didn't do anything preparation wise. You just completely neglected it because you said it's all going to work just fine, didn't you?
Yeah, no, we've learned our lessons, and I mean, our system's new, but it's still probably 10 to 15 years old now. Some of it is. So it's got some age on it. And with that comes a lot of wear and tear in some places. And like Brody was talking about with some of the conveyors and stuff like that, just looking them over and being able to head that off before, because I can have one piece of that grain system go down and it stops all four combines in the field. So it's a big deal for us. You know, you don't like doing those midnight runs when you're trying to go get parts and come back and get them put together. And so much of the stuff you do nowadays with the grain bins and stuff, you know, it's so much preventive maintenance can really help you out. You know, you got a lot of bearings and that type of thing that you really need to pay attention to. And every system's different and everybody has different issues, but so much of it can be prevented just with a little bit of maintenance and a little bit of upkeep along the way.
Most common thing you see, Dave and Rody, most common thing, Rody, you see, I'm guessing, probably electrical. Probably because it's outdoors and it's high voltage. I'm guessing it's electrical that's the usual problem.
On a new system typically, because they're not always able to check everything. You know, the electricians aren't there. The other thing too is, you know, on as far as a dryer, especially not necessarily a new dryer because we're out there kind of walking them through it, but somebody that's had a dryer for 2-3 years, they're only using it for, you know, maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks out of the year, then it sits. So a lot of guys, and I've been telling this to a lot of guys now, is, you know, go ahead and practice on it, you know, a month before you're going to use it. Get used to running it without any product in it because you're not going to hurt anything. So it's just, it gets to be like, they forget how to run it, just kind of forget some of the nuances. And then I'll get the call, you know, it's easy to walk them through it, but, you know, Johnny, you guys had a little issue down there and it's kind of, it was electrical glitch, you know, and kind of walk through it. And it's just, there's always something small that just pops up.
Yeah.
What about then the thing that most people are like, all right, electrical, dryers, fans, et cetera, for an older facility? I'm thinking some of the metal. I'm thinking leaks. I'm thinking stuff like that. Is that actually happen, or is that not really an issue? Dave, you go. You probably see old facilities.
Yeah. You know, it all kind of depends on, you know, everything has gotten better through the years as far as, you know, seals and stuff like that, you know, grain bin is erected with, and, you know, base seal and stuff like that. That's where you'll see on a lot of the older sites, that base seal where the steel will meet the concrete. It's not a matter of if, it's when, you know, it's going to wear out. And a lot of times
I just go along and I just take some of that packle stuff and flap it down, tar.
Yep. Yeah. Tar. I can't recommend tar because it's just messy and it's kind of a thing of the past, but there's a lot of new type of sealants out there, and fabrics that you can use to reseal your bins. And that's another way you let guys lose a lot of airflow too. You know, if you don't have, you want that bin to be pressurized, and if you're losing air from underneath it, I mean, you're losing air. You're not going to have full capacity of full drying capacity that you once had.
Mm-hmm. Johnny, the last time, you know, when you drive by factories and it says this facility has worked 501 days without a lost time accident. What's the last lost time incident you had on your grain facility that caused you to have to stop dumping?
Lightning struck.
What did it do?
It took out some electrical relays and stuff like that. And stuff like that you can't prevent. You know, that's one thing Rody mentioned a while ago. If you can turn that dryer on, make sure all the motors are coming on a week or two out, it gives you a lot of time to figure that out, because, you know, it seems to happen to us quite a bit where we're located. We get a lot of pretty big lightning storms and a lot of trees around that attract them on top of all the metal legs sticking up. So it's pretty interesting how many times we get hit in a year, but that's one thing. We thought everything was ready to go. We'd actually been drying, and then I guess around September 1st, we had a pretty good storm come through and took a little lightning hit and knocked out a few things. And like I said, it didn't take a lot of time to get it fixed. You just got to have somebody halfway knows how to walk you through what you're looking for.
Did you know it immediately, or did you not know it until you went out and flipped the switch and said, oh, I think that storm that came through a couple of weeks ago must have done some damage?
Yeah, that's what happened to us. You know, we didn't realize anything. Nothing in the office was hurt, just on the grain system itself. So. Yeah,
the thing that you see that, Rody, you think is the most preventable, the thing you're like, good God, why did you not take? Why is this causing you problems? It's easily handled.
A lot of it is what Johnny touched on. The very first point is being proactive. When I was running our service department, I would get so many calls from guys that, I'm unloading my bin now and I've got a floor that's partially collapsed. Need you guys to come out here and fix it. Okay, not a problem. When you need it? Well, it's Friday and I'm going to be filling it back up on Monday with this year's crop. Can you guys get out here and fix that? It's just like there's some of that stuff can be prevented just by, especially if you knew about it beforehand. Had a lot of guys that have emptied the bin and emptied it in June, and yeah, I meant to call you in June, but I forgot. Well, it's hard to jump when we didn't know about it. So,
What about when we think about, are your bins ready for harvest? What do we think the thing that your big recommendation, like if you're doing the public service, remember every year, hey, be sure to do this, this, and this. Give me my top 3 things. Dave, I haven't heard from you a minute.
Yeah, kind of like I'd mentioned earlier, I would say definitely check your fans. Just bump them, make sure that they turn on. Because there's, they're problematic. There's, on single phase fans, there's capacitors and stuff. There's wear parts on them. It's something, they're not going to last forever.
Right.
So
and you talked about leaks, which most of the leaks happen at the base. So that's easy. You don't have to get on a ladder. You don't have to do any climbing. You can do that from the ground, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And there is potential for leaks at the top too with your roof vents. Guys have seen that before. That sealant that goes up on the top of the roof vent that can wear out over time. Typically guys find that out the hard way, with spoiled grain on the top, it crusts over because
that's not require me. I'm going to get like some sort of a boom lift out to fix that because these bins are a little taller than an extension ladder at this point.
Yeah. You can access them from the top, but it's definitely not recommended.
Well, we always try to do, Dave, along what he's saying. A lot of times before we start putting grain in there, if it's raining, we'll go out there and walk through the bins, just make sure we don't have water dripping.
Yep.
That's pretty simple you can do.
Absolutely.
If you have water dripping, you got an issue, and if not, you should be good to go. So that's something we try to do every year, is kind of walk through and just make sure we don't see visual water
when they're empty.
When they're empty, that's right.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
That's an easy one. So sometime when you get a summer boomer, sometime between June and September, you get a big summer rainstorm. Spend time in your bins, and then once you're in there, if it's all dry, then you're fine. So that's an easy way of having to get on the boom and go up and find it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Fans, leaks on the top. Next thing.
And then another one too is in your sweep. There's typically, most power sweeps have 2 gearboxes. Again, some are better than others, but it really doesn't matter. They're not going to last forever.
Okay.
Guys, you get that panic phone call when, the bin is full, and they start emptying it and one gearbox goes out and they can't get anything out of it. Typically it happens when they get down to the bottom and they want to run their sweep. So you can get in the bin, you can access it, but there's still usually a decent amount of grain in there. But usually it's, I have a contract for the rest of September. I have to get this hauled out by the end of the week. You get to get here now and replace this gearbox. You can test these things. You can run them, before you fill the bin. Turn the unload on, make sure that the flighting and everything's spinning in the tube. You can engage your sweep, make sure that your sweep goes around.
You're saying do that when it's empty.
Yes, do everything.
The sweep auger stays in there and gets a million tons of grain dropped on it. That doesn't damage it. It's just that somehow the electrical part of it does.
Well, the gearbox is just, it'll wear. I mean, there's components in it that'll eventually goes. So, but
Brody, you got anything for me on making sure my bins are ready for harvest?
One thing that we forgot about that kind of makes me think is critters. We actually had a grain dryer last year we went out to do some service on, and there was a family of raccoons, a mama and 3 babies that were basically inside the conveyors that we didn't realize until after we turned it on. And so we basically had to chase them between conveyor to conveyor and scoot them out of there. But that was an interesting one.
They don't have that problem at Varell Farms. He has an employee named Brian Adams who hails from Mississippi They eat raccoons. I mean, that's like he's there's probably no raccoon problems there because Brian Am chases around, shoots them, and turns them into hats or something. Am I right about that, John?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Damon.
I've spent enough time down in Mississippi. That doesn't surprise me.
I'm kidding. Brian's my buddy. I like to wise out.
I'd take a hat if you want to send one up here. It gets cold in the winter.
All right, get me out of here, Johnny Varell. We asked the question: are your grain bins ready for harvest? You've worked with the old stuff, you worked with the new stuff. Now you've got stuff that's everywhere between. And age doesn't really matter. So just making sure you're being thorough about this. There's a real dollar amount to this. It can be a real cost.
Yeah, our grain system is just as important as the combine itself is. And I mean, without the grain system, when we're having to haul 50, 60 miles to an elevator, we can't operate. So we use it pretty much as our own elevator, and we haul out when we can when it rains. So the grain system is just as big a piece of equipment for us as the combine itself.
You have a devoted maintenance guy that you have a checklist on this? Are you that thorough? Like, do you send somebody out there and say, this month do this month do that?
Now, we usually just, as we're running, after about a week, we'll go out and check everything over, just like today. That's what the guys have been doing. And then right before we start up, we go through everything and grease everything ourselves just to make sure it's done right. So
we asked the question, is your grain set up ready for harvest? This has got to be a lot of helpful information. We got good information here from Johnny Varell, Dave Waylander, and Rody Gelberg, with both of them with Superior Grain. We've recorded several episodes with them, and also I recorded stuff at Mr. Varell's farming setup. From his grain dryer and some of the things there. Go and check it out. You can also check out all the hundreds of other videos that we've done on these guys' farms that they've shot to help you with your agronomic, your chemical, your seed. I mean, everything you do, the business side of farming, the mechanicals, the machinery. We've done it at these guys' farms, and it's very helpful. It's all free at XtremeAg.farm. Go check it out. Till next time, thanks for being here. I'm Damien Mason with XtremeAg.
That's a wrap for this episode of Cutting the Curve. Make sure to check out XtremeAg.farm for more great content to help you squeeze more profit out of your farming operation. Cutting the Curve is brought to you by CLAAS, where machines aren't just made, they're made for more. Visit CLAAS.com and start cutting your curve with cutting-edge equipment.